everyone, welcome back to another Python video. So let's recap from the previous video. So we covered input. Let's dive a little deeper into strings today. We've already seen some of the most commonly used data types in Python, like int, which is short for integer, and then there's floats, also known as floating points, bool or boolean, which generally represents the value of true or false, and also strings, which I will elaborate in this video. So here's a quick summary of strings. So strings are in quotes, quotation marks, speech marks, whatever you call them. They can be in double quotes or single quotes, but you have to make sure the other side matches, and make sure if you're using an apostrophe in your message, make sure to use double. You use 3 quotes on each side for multi-line print, where you can print a message that spans more than one line. There are also empty strings. So they are the strings that have nothing inside them. The purpose of this is that you will later add messages and more into the string. We've already learned about concatenation in the previous episodes, but just to do a little recap, I'm going to try it here. So we can try to concatenate hello and I am a robot and pizzas plus 4. So let's try this out in the idle shell. And if we press enter, it's going to say, hello, I am a robot. So we can try concatenating pizzas and then 4. So you see there's going to be an error over here because you can't do a string plus an integer. So if someone asked you to do pizzas plus 4 or any other word plus a number, to be honest, I don't think anyone would ask you that anyway. You would be confused and be like, what? So we can try multiplying pizzas by 4 instead and see what happens. So if we press enter, you see it's going to say pizzas 4 times. So basically it's just going to print out the word pizzas 4 times. So it's going to say pizzas, pizzas, pizzas and pizzas. If you want, you can do a space after pizzas so they'll be separated, but that's okay for now. So now we're going to learn about indexes. So it says strings are made up of characters. So just to clarify, characters are like letters, numbers, underscores, etc., such as welcome. And you can see over here that I wrote the index for each letter. So this slide is saying that each character has an index. So for example, M has the index 5. You may be wondering why M has the index 5 when it's the 6th letter of a string, and W is the first letter, but its index is 0. Well, that's because an important note says that indexes always start at 0, and many people get confused with it starting with 1. I honestly don't know why it starts at 0, but that's just the way it is. And also there are negative indexes. So the first negative number starts at -1, which is at the last character, and decreases right to left. So for example, E has the index -4. So to summarize, if your index is a positive number, it goes left to right. But if your index is a negative number, it goes right to left. So this is how we can access specific characters of a string. So I made a variable called vegetable and assigned it to carrot. And then we make another variable called second letter. And then we assign that to vegetable, our variable. So inside these brackets is the index of the second letter. Remember in Python that indexes start from 0. So the second letter is index 1. And then we can print our variable out here. So let's try this in the idle shell. And then if we press enter, it will print out the second letter, which is A. So A is the second letter and its index is 1 because all indexes start from 0. And then we can make a variable called last letter because we want to find out the last letter of the string, and we assign it to our variable's name, vegetable, and then we type -1 inside the square brackets since that's the last letter's index. So you can also do the index 5, which is the last letter, but either way it will work. And then we can print our variable out over here. So let's try this last example of this slide in the idle shell. And then if we press enter, you see the output would be T since that's the last letter of carrot. Using print, we can type a message and find the index of a character without assigning it to a variable. So it's just a quick shortcut we can do. So we type print and then the string that we want Python to print. So in this case it's bubble. And then you have to make sure the index 1 is inside the square brackets. We put it outside the string because we want to find the first index of bubble. The same goes for the second example, except we want to find the second index. I'm going to try this out in the idle shell now. So then if we press enter, you will see that it will just print the first index of the word bubble. So then if we press enter, you see it will return the second index of the word. So in this case, it's the letter B. So if we told Python to print out the third index of the letter bubble, it would also be B because there's 2 B's in the middle of the word here. And then we can do the same, except the string will be bubble gum. So we can do more since bubble gum has more indexes. So here are the negative indexes, -7 and -3. So now I'm going to try this out in the idle shell. So if you press enter, you see that it will return the letter B. So let's count down from M to find where -7 is. So M is -1, U is -2, G is -3, and also the space plays a part as an index, so that's -4, and then E is -5, L is -6, and then the second B is -7. So then if we press enter, you see that it will return G. So since we're finding out the index -3, so let's count down from M to find the -3rd index. So this is -1, this is -2, and then this is -3. So it will return G capital because in the string, G is capital. So let's try to print a character that is too far. So too far basically just means the index is being too high. So we try to print out a higher index than the actual string itself. So I make a variable called religion and then I assign it to Hindu. And then I try printing out the 8th index. So the 8th index is a 9th character or letter, but Hindu only has 5 letters. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So it's only going up to the 4th index. So let's try this out in the idle shell and see what happens. So if we press enter, you see that there will be an error since there is no 8th index. So it's a string index out of range. So that basically just means that the index we are trying to print out of this string is higher than the actual length of the string. So a string can be sliced into many different parts. So X is just an example variable. I haven't assigned it to anything here because I'm just telling you the syntax of slicing strings. So slicing strings basically just means that you want to access a particular amount of characters or letters in a string instead of just one. So think of it as slicing a pizza when you want to get a particular amount of slices. So the first parameter that will go inside the square brackets is index start. So that's just the starting index. So from the starting index, Python will iterate through the letters until the index end. So the index end is the index that we want Python to stop the iteration through all the letters. And then there's a skip step. So a skip step is the amount of characters or letters we want Python to skip through, since it says skip. So here I'm using the example from before, bubble and bubblegum. So here we are using the index start and then the index end, not the skip step right now because that's a bit complicated. So we're using the index start and the index end only. So we can try this out in the idle shell. So they will give substrings from the starting point until the stopping point, but not including the character at the stopping point. So this explanation is a bit complicated, but I'll explain it when we try this out right now. So you see here after we type the string, we have to type square brackets and then inside them will be the indexes that we want Python to iterate through. So the starting index will be 1 in this case, and then we do a colon. So in order to do a colon, if you don't know, is just shift and then you press the button with a colon on the top and a semicolon on the bottom. And then you type the end string, so that's going to be 4. And also don't forget to close the brackets. So if we press enter, you see that it will return U, B, and then another B. So U is the first index, so that's the starting index. And then the middle letter in this string is the first B, and then the last B, which is over here. So you may be wondering why it ends on the last B, since the end index is number 4. So I said that it stops 1 before the ending index. So what I mean by this is that the 4th index is L, but it stops the character before that. The starting index, you start from normal, but the most important thing that you have to be aware of is that it stops at the index before the index that you type. So if you type the ending index as L, it will stop at B instead. Again, I don't know why it's like this, but they just made it like that, I guess. So we're going to try the same thing out using the same string, but this time it's index 2 and 3. So if we press enter, it will just say B. So B is the second index. So the last index is 3, but like I said, it will stop printing at the index before what it says here. So the third index is another B, but it stops 1 before that. So we're basically just telling Python to print the second letter. So we're also going to try the same thing out again, except the string is going to be bubblegum. And then we're going to try going from index 7 to index 24. So you may notice that bubblegum doesn't have 24 indexes. In fact, it has 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 indexes. But we're going to 24. So let's see what happens if we try and end at an index that is higher than the string itself. So last time when we tried to print an index that's higher from the entire string, we got an error. But let's see what happens this time if we press enter. So you see it's just going to say gum. So the 7th index is G, so it will start there. And then it will go all the way to the 9th index, which is M. So it prints out the word gum. So this time there's no error. So if you give it an index that's higher than the actual string, it will just go to the maximum index and then just stop at there. So let's try some more practice with string slicing. So I make a new variable called full name and I assign it to Monty Python. So you see here twice we're trying to iterate through some indexes in our variable called full names value. So let's try this out in the idle shell. So if we press enter, you see it's going to say ty and then a space pyt. So if it starts at the index 3, so that's t, and then it goes all the way to the 9th index, so that's the 8th index since it stops at a letter before that. So let's count up indexes. So t is the 3rd index, then y is the 4th index, and then space still counts as an index again, and that's the 5th index, and then p is the 6th index, and then y is the 7th index, and then t is the 8th index, which it will stop at. So it's going to print out that. So if we press enter, you see it's going to say M N Y P T O. So you see this time we use a skip step. So a skip step of 2 means that it will print every other letter. So if it starts at 0, which is the 1st index, and if it ends at 11, which is the last index, it's going to print the 0th index, which is M, the 2nd index, which is N, and then the 4th index, which is Y, the 6th index, which is P, the 8th index, which is T, the 10th index, which is O, and since it skips a letter each time, it won't print out the letter N, but if there was any other letter after N, it would print that, but since there was no letter, it will just stop at O. So this is a bit confusing, so don't worry if you find this tricky. So as we progress in Python, we are also going to revise previous techniques. So don't worry about it at all if you are not understanding very much. So here's an extra challenge with string slicing. So of course this is optional, you don't have to do that. Again, this whole video is optional, so you don't have to try it at the examples, but I would at least try and recommend you try out the examples that I tell you to do. So let me read this text out to you. So I'm going to make a variable called word and assign it to magic. What I want you to do is to iterate through the consonants of the word magic using the way that I have taught you. You may want to add a skip step into the square brackets. Your final result should print the characters M, G, and C. So if you want, you can pause this video now and try this out. So it's a bit hard, and if you can't do this, don't worry, I will show you how to do this in the next slide. So I make a variable called word and assign it to the string magic. And then I do word 0, 5, 2. So 0 is the starting index, 5 is the ending index. So there are 4 indexes in total in the word magic. So if you want to go to the highest index, you always have to type 1 index higher than the actual ending index. And then we do 2 here, so that's the skip step. So you see the output over here would be M, G, C. So in this example, I'm just printing out every letter that's not a vowel. So the only vowels in this letter are A and I, but I'm trying to print out the letters M, G, and C. Using an example from earlier in this video, I want to calculate the length of a string. So if you have a super long string and you want to find out the length of it, instead of taking ages and ages counting all the letters, I made a new variable called length of the string and assigned it to my other variable's name, vegetable, except I wrote len around the variable's name, and that's enclosed in brackets. So len stands for length, and length simply means how long it is. In this case, we are trying to find out the length of our variable. So we can now try this in the idle shell and see what happens. So if we press enter, you see it will return the length of the string, which is 6. So you see there are 6 letters in caret, so it's going to print out 6. So in means something that's inside of it, like a teddy is in a box. Well, we can use this for strings. We can check if a letter is inside of a word. So using my full name example, we type a letter or character and then in and then your variable's name. Because we want to check whether specific letter is in my variable full name. So I tried H, Z and N, but you can keep experimenting and try typing different letters. And the output would be a Boolean, which is either true or false. So if you press enter, it's going to return true since the letter H is inside our variable called full name over here. So let's then see if Z is in our variable called full name. So you see it's going to be false because there's no Z in Monty Python. So we're going to try N now, and then if we press enter, it should say true because there's an N over here and then an N at the end of the string. So it doesn't matter if there are more than one of that character or letter. If there are one or more of that letter or character, it will return true. And if that letter or character is not in your variable's name, it will return false. So as an extra challenge, you can try doing this with your actual full name and then try seeing if different letters are inside your full name. So here are some cool stuff you can do with strings. So I'm going to read them out to you. So keep in mind that the variable str or string is just an example variable. So str.upper makes all of your strings letters in capital letters, and then str.lower makes all of your strings letters in lowercase letters, and then str.capitalize makes the letter at the start of the string capital, and then str.title makes the letter at the start of every word in the string a capital letter, and then str.replace replaces part of the string with something else, and then str.find checks if a group of letters or a single letter is in a particular string, and then str.swapcase. So if a letter is lowercase, it will switch to a capital letter and vice versa. So vice versa basically means just opposite. So if it's already a capital letter, it will turn into a lowercase letter. So it says use dir and then your variable's name inside the brackets. It doesn't have to be the variable str to find out what functions you can use on your variables. So the dir function returns all of the possible methods you can apply to your variable. So these ones on the screen are not all of them. There is a lot and it would take a long time for me to explain all of them, but you can apply them to your variable. I'll show you how in the next slide, so don't worry, in your own free time. Here I'm making a variable called opinion and assigning it to I like coding in Python. And then we make a variable called lowercase because we want to find out the string in lowercase by assigning it to our first variable's name, opinion, and then we type dot lower, and then you type the opening and closing brackets without anything being inside them, and then we can print our new variable out, and then we can also try printing out opinion and see what happens. So let's try this first example in the idle shell. So if you press enter, you see that it will print out the string I like coding in Python, but all in lowercase. So nearly all of this string is in lowercase except the capital I at the start of the sentence and the capital P for Python. And then we can try printing out opinion and see what happens. So you see, this is going to be the normal string, I like coding in Python. And then you might notice that the I and then the P is capital. So when we make a variable called lowercase and assign it to opinion.lower, this won't change the actual value of opinion at all. Okay, so now let's try to make all the letters in my variable's name. I like coding in Python, uppercase. So I do the same thing over here, except I call the variable uppercase, and then I can print my variable out, and hopefully it should turn the whole string uppercase. Let's try this second example out in the idle shell. And if we press enter, you will see that it will return the whole string in uppercase. So I and P were already uppercase, but most of the string were lowercase, so it converted all of the letters into uppercase. Okay, so now we are going to practice using the find function. So we are going to be using the same variable, opinion, and the same string. I like coding in Python. So we make a new variable called pos and assign it to my variable's name, opinion, and then we type .find and then open parentheses. Instead of leaving it empty, we type a specific string on this time that is inside the original string, opinion. Since it is a string, it's enclosed by quotes on both sides. And then we can print our variable out, and then it's going to find the index of the characters that you write here in our opinion's variable value. I like coding in Python. So let's try this out in the idle shell. So if we press enter, you see it's going to print out the number 21. So let's first find where the letters ON or ON are. So this is index 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. So you see that O is at the index 21, but for some reason it doesn't print out the index of N, which is just right after O, so that's 22. So it will only print out the index of the first letter, which is O. Since it only prints the first letter's index, we will only do it with one letter. Let's try the letter I out. So you see I'm using the same variable pos this time, so I'm just reassigning it to something else. So I've taught you this before, but if you reassign a previous used variable, so since pos was used for opinion.find on and this is being used for I, its value will be the new value or most recent value. So if you press enter, it will print out the index 3. So let's try and find the letter I in our string. So there's actually many I's. So the first letter is I, I's over here, I's over here, and I's over here. So there's 4 I's. But you see that it only printed out the index 3. But there are 4 I's. So one reason for this is that it's not printing out the first I because this is a capital letter. You didn't write a capital I. And it printed out the index of the first non-capital I, which has the index 3. Since I is index 0, space is 1, L is 2, and then I is 3. So if you tell Python to find out a specific letter, like I in this case, and in that string, it's using that letter multiple times, like this one, it will print out the first time it sees that letter. And also, if you tell Python to find a lowercase version of that letter, it will find the first lowercase letter in that string and vice versa. Okay, so since it will only print out the index of the first in the string, we can try out the letter K from the word like, and hopefully it should work since there's only one K inside the whole string. So if you press enter, you see that Python will return 4. So the capital I is 0, space is 1, L is 2, I is 3, and K is 4. So it will print out the index 4. So let's move on to our final topic for today, replace. So we are using the same example again, opinion equals I like coding in Python. So replace basically just means that you take something away and you put something else in that place. So that's what we will try with words, one at a time. So I made a new variable called replacement, and I assigned it to our variable's name, opinion, and then I typed dot replace after it. Following that is our brackets, and inside them there are two words, Python and JavaScript. If you don't know what JavaScript is, it's basically just another programming language. So the first word is the word that is already in the string that we will replace with the second word, JavaScript. So we can then print our variable out. Below I am doing the same thing, except I'm replacing coding with programming, which has the same meaning as coding, and then we can print our variable out. Let's try both of these examples out in the idle shell. So if you press enter, you see that it will say I like coding in JavaScript instead of I like coding in Python. And also, let's check if opinion is still the same. So this wasn't in the slides. I just thought of it as a last minute thing anyway. So you see that the original variable hasn't changed again. So the string is still I like coding in Python, like over here. So now we can try the second example out. So if you press enter, you see that it will return I like coding in Python. But since we replaced coding with programming, the string should say I like programming in Python. But for some reason it hasn't worked. And also if you print out opinion, it's showing the same output. I like coding in Python. So I'm going to explain you how to fix this bug in the next slide. And also you may notice that it doesn't have an error. That still means that it's a bug because we aren't getting Python what we want it to do. So when we tried the second example out, replacement is equal to opinion.replace, coding, programming. And then when we printed replacement out, it showed our original string, I like coding in Python. And when we printed out our first variable opinion, it showed the same string. So the way to fix this is one minor change here, and you may not notice it, but this time we've made the C not capital. So when we tried it out last time, the C was capital, but the way to fix this is to make the C not capital, because in this original string, the C is a lowercase letter. So you have to remember that Python is case sensitive and could easily get confused with lowercase and capital letters. So coding with a lowercase c is different to coding with the uppercase C. And here we are printing a variable out. So let's try this out in the idle shell and hopefully it should work. So if we now press enter, you see that it will say, I like programming in Python. So yay, it works now. But I just want to tell you one more thing. So earlier our replacement string said I like coding in JavaScript, but you see we reassigned it to something else. So when we reassign it, the old values are replaced by new values. So you see here we are reassigning my replacement variable, and when we reassign our variable to a new value, it will automatically be replaced by this. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I hope this video has helped you, and see you in the next video. But before I say bye, I just have a quick note to tell you. So sorry if this video gets too long, and I might have to cut it into 2 parts again. And also, you see we are at 79 subscribers at the time we are recording, so maybe we can try to get 100 subscribers as a challenge. I don't think this will be too hard since we only need 21 more. If you can at least do that, I'd appreciate that. So I hope you have a good day, and bye!